This meeting is being recorded.
Okay. So thank you all for taking time out of your day to join us for this very important Zoom session this morning. I just want to introduce Mark Johnson. Mark joined the Washington Retail Association January of 2005 as a director of government affairs. And in June of 2006, he was promoted to vice president. Mark is responsible for the strategic development of the government affairs activities of the Washington Retail Association and the government affairs division's activities. He leads high priority issues for the association, such as taxes, unemployment insurance, healthcare, privacy issues, and the handling of consumer products. Mark is also the lead staff for the association's Small Business Committee, Political Action Committee, and its Government Affairs Committee. He's a very busy guy, has a huge list of associations, committees, organizations that he's a member of. He's also a Seattle native and a 1987 graduate of Central Washington University, completing a degree in political science and a minor in economics and an emphasis in communication.
Go Wildcats.
Both of my boys graduated from Central, so
I like you even
I
more.
agree.
I like you even more.
Today, Mark's going to go over Washington Retail Association's top 10 issues, but mostly he's going to focus on public safety and retail crime. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark Johnson.
Hey, well, thank you so much, Angie. One of the great fun parts of my job is being able to visit with chambers of commerce and their members. So I really appreciate the invitation. Sorry I couldn't make it down there in person, but in the future, I just love coming down to the Gorge and visiting Stevenson and Skamania. It's a beautiful part of our state, and you're really fortunate to represent and work down there. So congratulations to you. Angie, if it's not too much to ask, I'd love to find out which kind of company Kelly and it looks like Summer own, just so I know who's I'm talking to. It really helps me out. If they can hear me, I'm Kelly and Summer. I'm curious where you guys work or what kind of business you own.
Well, I'll start first. So I'm Summer Shire. Angie invited me. I am the sheriff-elect for Skamania County. And so I'll take office January 1. And obviously this has some interest in the law enforcement side of things. So I'm grateful to be here today.
Oh, fantastic. Congratulations on your election and
Thank you.
Best wishes on your term. It's 4-year term, is it?
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. Summer, I believe the Washington Association of Police Chiefs and Sheriffs, WASPC, held their conference down in Skamania. Is that correct? Did I hear right?
That is correct. And I got to speak to a lot of them when I was up in Olympia last week, and they complained about our east winds and the conditions about 14, which are both legitimate complaints, but they
valid.
Said beautiful. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I was talking to the chief for the city of Issaquah, and she had mentioned she had just come up from Skamania, and I said, oh, very cool. What a great place to have a conference. I love it down there.
Absolutely. They've outgrown it. They've outgrown the lodge, so they're going to move next year, but it's because it's such a large, people coming in. So, I mean, it's a good thing. It's just unfortunate that the year that I'll be attending is not going to be in my backyard.
They're getting too big. Well, that's a good thing, I guess. Yeah. Well, great to have you on. Thanks for taking some time, and I hope it's worth your while with my comments that I'm going to make.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Kelly.
Good morning. How are you?
Great. How's it going?
Good. I'm Kelly O'Malley McKee. I'm the executive director for the Stevenson Downtown Association. We're the local Main Street program affiliated with the Washington Main Street at the state level.
Oh, fantastic. And you wouldn't be part Irish, would you at all?
Yeah, just a little Irish and then married into the Scotch Irish.
Oh my goodness. Well, you're a through and through British Isles kind of person, aren't you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Downtown Stevenson Association, huh?
Yep, Stevenson Downtown Association, SDA for short.
SDA, okay.
And Stevenson Main Street is like another reference to us. So I work with the downtown businesses and downtown neighbors, essentially, to make our downtown area more vibrant and beautiful and supportive of the local economy. So we obviously support the local businesses, but also we work on kind of beautifying and cleaning up and stuff like that too.
Oh, fantastic. You must work closely with Angie and all. And I'm curious, Angie and Kelly, who does the tourism? Do you have a separate tourism and visitors and convention bureau? Angel and Angie are the team on that, huh?
It's a one-stop shopping here.
Well, fantastic. Every time I come to Stevenson, I really enjoy it. It's a very clean, welcoming, and fun environment to come to, in addition to the incredible scenic beauty. So I really enjoy that. Let me just tell you folks on the phone for the benefit to the Washington Retail Association was formed in 1987. We were an offshoot of the Association of Washington Business, or the State Chamber of Commerce. But a group of retailers wanted to have a very retail specific association, and they formed Washington Retail. And we currently have about 4,500 storefronts throughout the state of Washington in all 49 legislative districts, all 39 counties. We represent truly a wide swath of the retail industry, all the way from the world's largest retailer, Amazon, Walmart, on down to the smallest sole proprietor. And about 90% of my membership are small businesses with 50 or fewer employees. And the top 10% of my membership, the big boxes, if you will, represent about 90% of all retail commerce in the state of Washington. We sell just about everything from cars, boats, to socks and groceries, and you name it, we sell it. And we look forward to, we very much value tremendously our partnerships and connections with chambers of commerce throughout the state, because we know that you're the boots on the ground, the grassroots, in connection with your, not only your legislative delegations, but also your law enforcement, your city councils, and your mayors. And we just really value that partnership immensely. So very excited when Angie gave me a ring and said, would you mind buzzing in and telling us what's going on in the legislative world, and with a special focus on public safety and retail theft and all of that good stuff. And I said, absolutely, happy to do that, and delighted to be here. So first slide I have is, well, aptly entitled Public Safety, Retail Theft, Inform, which I'll explain in a second, and Organized Retail Crime. And they all kind of go together. The number one issue for my members and for a lot of other industries is public safety. If a retail employee doesn't feel safe going to that store to go to work, we have some real problems. They need to feel comfortable and safe in their working environment, or we're going to have workforce issues and being able to staff our stores. An extreme example up in the city of Seattle, Bartell's, Rite Aid, they actually shut down stores, one in the Chinatown district, because it was unsafe and the store became unprofitable. So they literally shuttered the store and took all the product out and shut it down because they couldn't keep employees going in there. Similarly, in the Pike Street area of Seattle, my Walgreens store there is on the brink of closing. They have hired off-duty Seattle police officers to try to keep it safer. And it's just been a constant battle up there in the city of Seattle with theft and violence. And so it's really scared. And the public safety is critical. The other part of that is for our customers. It's really important that a shopper goes into a store or a mall or other retail establishment that they feel safe and comfortable, and that they can bring their family. And they do not want to have to worry about their public safety when they are going into a shopping environment. And so public safety has become our number one issue. I think a perfect storm, and you all saw this with the pandemic hitting, people masking up, and made it more difficult for us to track some of the bad guys that were operating in our stores. It made it difficult to identify. Also, the sheriff will understand this, the capacity of our jails was significantly reduced, unfortunately. In some instances, half or fewer jail beds were available for spacing and other COVID restrictions. So that really limited, if you even caught the bad guys, what do you do once you catch them? You can't put them in jail because the jail beds can only be used for the really serious offenders, for the really serious crimes out there. And for property theft and retail theft, and they were not a high enough level to put them in jail. So people would be apprehended if they even got caught, and then they would be released shortly after. So the risk versus reward for retail theft was and continues to be pretty high, and that's unfortunate. The other big issue is with the Blake decision, and what the Blake decision is that in very simple terms, the Washington State Supreme Court legalized the possession of narcotics, high-level drugs, not marijuana, not alcohol, which are both regulated substances in the state of Washington, but things like heroin and fentanyl and meth, all are now legal to have on their possession. So if the sheriff pulls somebody over and in the back seat they have a big block of cocaine or something, it's okay. And I'm just going, well, that's ridiculous. So the legislature has got to address the use and possession of these very toxic, very deadly narcotics in our communities. And it's really sad. So the legislature will be addressing the, quote, Blake decision this coming legislative session. I will be supporting those efforts very closely, because it truly is a public safety issue, and a safety for those folks that might be suffering from a substance addiction. We need to get them the treatment they need and get them off the streets and get them to stop stealing, oftentimes from retail establishments to fund their unfortunate substance addiction. So that the Blake decision will be huge. Another public safety issue, which I just touched on with you, Angie and Angel and Laura earlier, was rolling back some of the unintended consequences of the so-called police reform measures that were passed a few years back. These actually handcuffed and tied the hands of our law enforcement and prosecutors very severely with regards to probable cause and pursuits of potential criminals. And I know WASPIC, WAPA, the other police associations and the retail association will be pushing very hard to allow our folks in law enforcement to be able to pursue criminals. One extreme example, up in Olympia, I was talking to the Olympia Police Department. I have a Home Depot maybe 5 blocks from my house, and they were describing whereas a suspect will come out of the Home Depot with potential stolen product in a cart, and they race to their car. Once they throw it in the back of their car and get into the car, they're home free. And I go, what do you mean? You witnessed them taking the product. They're a suspect. Why can't you chase them and pull them over? Because they are not allowed to. And I'm going, well, that's crazy. And they go, so their window of opportunity is from the front door of the Home Depot to the car. And once they get to the car, they're home free. And I go, that's wrong. And they go, well, that's what our interpretation of the law is right now. So we'll be supporting the measure to allow them to actually chase the bad guys if they see them taking the product and sticking it in their car that they haven't paid for. And we think that's going to be really essential for getting a sense of normalcy and sending a message to these retail theft rings that this won't be tolerated. And if they do, they will be held accountable. Again, on the incarceration angle, this was kind of interesting to me, Sheriff, and I think you'll appreciate this. Up in my neck of the woods, we have the Nisqually Indian tribe. they figured it out, and they built a very large capacity correctional facility that isn't under all of the regulations that the federal and state governments have put on. So they're able to accept criminals that have been convicted into their facility. So a lot of the local jurisdictions around here, once they apprehend people, they're sending them to the Nisqually Correctional Facility on tribal land. And it's a great way to get around the restrictions that are being held at the Thurston County Jail or at some of the other facilities that are run by the cities and the county. So ingenious that they have contracting with the Nisqually tribal folks to get them off the streets, which we think is pretty good. But I think as the pandemic subsides and the jails start to reopen again, I think we'll see a decline in retail theft and other criminal activity, because criminals are they're not horribly smart, but they're smart enough to learn that, oh, I might actually go to jail now and spend some time behind bars. Maybe I shouldn't do that. And that really gets into my INFORM. You see this in bold here. It's an acronym, and people say, what does INFORM mean? And it stands for integrity, notification, and fairness in online retail marketplaces. And that spells out INFORM. The INFORM Act was introduced first at a federal level about 4 years ago. The number of that one is HR 5502, House Resolution 5502, introduced in the House. It died the first 3 years, back and forth. And what it would do, and then I'll tell you where it's at. So what it would do would require high volume. You have to have a certain number of transactions, a certain amount of sales before you would have to adhere to this for an online third-party marketplace. So a website can be brought up at a third-party marketplace, eBay, OfferUp, and you can sell goods and products. What we found out from the retail industry is a lot of stolen merchandise and counterfeit merchandise is being sold in the darkness of the web. And because it's very hard to track, it's very hard to find out where they're based at, and they can at will sell stolen products. So you'll go online, you'll see a Makita power saw, for instance, that was stolen from Home Depot, still with the spider wrapping on it, still in the original box, online on one of these third-party sites for sale for $200 when it retails for $600. And you're going, that's a pretty good deal. As a consumer, you're oblivious and really don't have a clue other than it's a great deal. You're probably wondering to yourself, why didn't they just return it to the Home Depot and get their $600 back? Well, because it's stolen. And a vast amount of items on the websites in these platforms that I just mentioned are stolen. And it's sad. But this INFORM Act would require them to provide some basic information. Where are you based at? What's your email address? What's a phone number? How can we contact you? Providing some of that basic information so that law enforcement can track the bad guys, so that as a consumer, you can know, have a little bit of assurance that it's not counterfeit or stolen. And I think it would really cut down the incentive to monetize stolen product into dollars. And this really gets to the crux of the third bullet is organized retail crime. So they're all interrelated. So the monetizing of stolen products is used to fund other nefarious and criminal activities. It's linked to, I know this may sound really hard to understand or to believe, it's used to fund terrorism. It's used to fund the war in the Ukraine, prostitution, gun smuggling, drug smuggling, human trafficking. All is linked to retail theft and the monetizing of stolen products. We just cracked down, this was 2 years ago, a huge theft ring in the Auburn area, $26 million in stolen products. They were running literally a mini distribution center out of 2 different warehouses and 10 semis, all online, and they were using it to fund all of those things I just mentioned there. The U.S. attorney cracked down. There were dozens of suspects that were apprehended and now serving long sentences, I'm happy to say, but that just really highlights the magnitude of this retail theft rings out there. They're not stealing the product to use for their own personal benefit. They're using it to sell it because it's safer, easier to steal from a retail establishment and monetize it than it is to go and steal from a bank. If you steal from a bank, you're going to, and you're apprehended, you're going to spend some serious time behind jail. It's a federal offense, and the penalties are much more severe. I am happy to report that the Inform Act, HR 5502, is on page 2,800 out of the 4,500 page omnibus spending bill that Congress is currently considering today and has to vote on by close of business tomorrow. So they adjourn tomorrow night, possibly late, like midnight, but they are scheduled to vote on this measure. We are crossing our fingers that they do vote on it. Anything can happen in Congress, but we're hoping that Congress passes the omnibus spending bill, which the Inform Act is contained in section 321, page 2800 of this massive bill, and goes to the president. He is has indicated he will sign the measure if it makes it to his desk. So we're cautiously optimistic there will be a 50-state standard on fencing stolen good on online platforms. And we think that would do wonders to disincentivize the stealing in the first place. If it's harder to turn those stolen products into cash, we think that'll go miles along in that respect. And then finally, on organized retail crime, we really applaud the Attorney General for recognizing there is a problem with these massive theft rings that are in the millions of dollars. We're not talking about petty shoplifting or what we call crimes of opportunity, when somebody goes into a store and says, I don't see any clerks around here. Hey, I grab that product and I'll walk off with that. Those little onesie twosies are not where the real issues are. It's these theft rings that operate up and down the I-5 corridor, or literally fly thieves in from out of state. In the city of Linwood, they just apprehended a theft ring. Folks from Miami were being flown up here to steal from stores, Target and other stores up in the Linwood area, and to fund their operations back in Florida. And I'm just going, wow. Talk about cross-country theft rings. Well, they cracked down on them. And so the Attorney General said, this has got to stop. And he has just started an organized retail crime task force. We're members of that. And he has asked the state legislature and the governor for an appropriation of $3 million to bolster by hiring more prosecutors, hiring more investigators, and a data analyst to bolster this organized retail crime task force to go after the really big offenders and the big crime rings that are operating not in only in our state, but across the country and even internationally. So we're very excited about the potentials for that. A number of other states are doing this. The state of California, state of Oregon is looking at one, New Mexico, Illinois. They're popping up everywhere. And we think this is a really good model to help our loss prevention, asset protection folks to work in conjunction with them to crack down on these massive organized retail crime rings that are operating all over the place, and hopefully take a bite out of it and say to these criminal enterprises, Washington State is not a good place to start to further your organized retail crime activities in our state. So we'll be interestingly, Angie, my boss, Renee Sunday, our president and CEO, is going to do a series of Chamber of Commerce talks. Her first one is going to be in Spokane at the Greater Spokane Incorporated, and then to Wenatchee, Bellevue, Tacoma. She's all doing this with the Attorney General, Bob Ferguson, on retail theft, public safety, and their organized retail crime task force. So they're hitting the road, if you will, January and February, and making the rounds around the state to highlight the need for action in addressing these very important issues that are plaguing our communities and our society. Let me stop there for a second and just see if there's any questions or comments on public safety, retail theft, Inform, or organized retail crime before I get into what else we're working on legislatively up at the Capitol this coming year. Any questions or comments from anybody? Am I on target, Sheriff?
Yes, sir. You brought up Blake, which is integral for us. Pursuits have been a big problem throughout the state. You know, it's one thing to enact legislation to prevent us from pursuing, but our own policies prevent us from pursuing when it's dangerous, and we're highly regulated within our own agencies. And what's unfortunate is that the state took this upon itself. Sorry, my Ralphie keeps making a presentation himself. He's a mama's boy.
Hey, Ralphie.
So what's unfortunate is that, you know, the state's completely different. The east side's different than the west side. The population's different. And so what this did is put this broad regulation on pursuits for safety purposes when, you know, we're all completely different. There's not a single stoplight in Skamania County. And, you know, our intersections are different. Our population is different, and we're highly regulated in and of ourselves. So when you're strangleheld by now a House bill that prevents us from making our own decisions within our agency, it's very difficult. So I'm very glad to hear that. I know WASPIC is also bringing in lobbyists to fight that as well. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And is that an Australian Shepherd? What kind of dog is that look like?
Yes, he's an Aussie.
Beautiful dog.
Thank you.
And helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, just ask him.
Angie, I see we're joined by Wanda. Wanda, would you mind? I'm just curious what business or company you might work for or own, if you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. I'm with the Economic Development Council and the Port of Skamania.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. Great to have you on. My boss, Renee Sunday, used to be with the Thurston County Economic Development Council before we stole her away. And then most recently with the City of Olympia Economic Development Board. So that's very near and dear to her heart and to our association's heart. And it's great to have you on the call.
Thank you.
Yeah. With that, let me turn to some of the other issues, all very important to the Retail Association that we see in our crystal ball coming down the pike from the legislature. This bill is already a prime sponsor. Senator Dinkra from the Bellevue Redmond area has announced that she will be prime sponsoring round 2 of the ergonomics battle. Some real quick background. The Department of Labor and Industries wrote a 396-page rule regulating ergonomics and how businesses had to comply and whether or not it could be considered a workplace injury. They wrote this without any authority from the legislature or the governor, and we screamed. This was back in the early 90s. And we took them to court. The Supreme Court said, no, you can do that if you want, LNI. We went to the legislature. They refused to act. So we actually ran an initiative in 1995 to get rid of this 396-page one-size-fits-all, extremely expensive and punitive rule that they didn't have any authority originally to run. The citizens of the state agreed overwhelmingly, and the ergonomics rule was tossed out. Well, fast forward to today, in the 2022 legislative session, they introduced a bill that said, in essence, labor and industries, you can write your rule if you want to. It was a huge battle, and the employer community was pitted against the folks in organized labor, unfortunately, and we won by just 1 vote in the Senate. The ergonomics bill did not pass by 1 vote in the Senate, and now the Senate has gained, the majority party has gained 1 more vote after the elections in November. So they have the votes needed to pass the ergonomics bill. We expect that it will be very close, if not passed this coming year, and now that the Senate has enough votes to enact it. So stay tuned on ergonomics. It'll be a ways down the road before the agency can write another rule, if it does in fact pass. But this is one of the big issues we will be battling this coming legislative session on ergonomics. Here's a really good bill that we are supporting that we actually drafted, and we call it kind of our win-win-win. So if you're an injured employee in the state of Washington, your employer can offer you light duty work. If you hurt your arm or your leg or something like that, they can offer you light duty work if they have it available. If they don't, then you end up on what's called time loss, and you usually end up at home waiting to get better and under the care of a providing physician. Studies have found that the agency and others across the country that if you're sitting at home rather than doing light duty, the time of recovery and the time of getting back to your original position is slowed considerably. And it's very costly to the state, to the employer, and to the morale of the employee that's sitting at home rather than going into their work. So we had an idea that, well, it's not an original idea. Other states are doing this, and we thought that it would be a fantastic idea to replicate in the state of Washington, and that is to allow, if an employer does not have a light duty work for that injured employee to come back to, let them go to a nonprofit. So an approved list of nonprofits in the state of Washington. They could go work at that nonprofit at no cost to the nonprofit organization. The employer and the agency, the Department of Labor and Industries, share in the cost of that employee's time loss. So the agency saves money, the employer saves money, and the nonprofit gets an employee on light duty for free. We think it's truly a win-win-win for all three groups. And most importantly, the employee gets to continue doing something productive, and their chance of going back to work in a quicker pace is significantly increased. So we'll be running this bill. A legislator down in your neck of the woods, Gina Mossbrooker, is agreed to prime sponsor this bill. So she is our prime. We really enjoy working with the good representative. She is an awesome supporter of the retail industry, and we're very excited about getting this bill introduced and running. I'm hoping, Angie, your association and Kelly, if you folks do endorse bills or something, take a look at it, and would really enjoy your support on this very proactive and supportive bill. So return to work. Long-Term Care Act. So this was a idea with a very good intentions, but unfortunately, as the state seems to have the issue of not very extremely well written, and didn't consider all the nuances of instituting a long-term care program, a massive long-term care program, and a new tax on employers and employees. So the long-term care sought to solve the problem of a lot of citizens in the state of Washington and across the country, quite frankly, when it comes time for them to retire and live out their golden years, they haven't put a lot of money away or saved much for their long-term care needs. So this was an attempt to have the state create a program, tax workers and employers to pay into a long-term care program so that they would receive a little bit of money if they needed it for long-term care services, nursing homes, or other services. The problem is they vastly underestimated what the program would truly cost. They totally underestimated how much they would be paying back out and what it would do for folks on long-term care. I don't know if any of you have any family members in a nursing home facility or anything else, but they are not inexpensive. And if you don't have insurance, it can really suck up all of their savings very, very fast. Unfortunately, my stepmom is at a nursing facility right now, and it's $7,000 per month. And she has about $200,000 in savings. Well, that's going to be gone in a couple of years if she lives that long. This program is saying that you'll be paying into it for the remainder of your working life, and you'll get eventually $36,000 back if you need it for long-term care services. Well, if you do the math, that's probably going to last you about 6 months or less. And I'm just going, not too long. So you've got that working for you, but the taxes that you have to pay into it and the solvency of the system were vastly undersold. So we're really concerned about the viability. We raised this issue last session, and the legislature wisely, in the first few weeks of the legislative session, what I call push the pause button on the program and said, maybe it's not ready for prime time. It was supposed to go into effect this year, but they pushed pause and they said, we're not going to make it go into effect until July of 2023 now. So they took a year off to try to tweak it, to try to bring it into solvency, to make some exemptions. For example, if you're of my age, I'm 58 and I retire, let's say 62, 65, 67, I'll never see a penny of it, but I'll be paying into it for the next 8 years. So there is no exemption. There's no, you have to pay into it whether you're going to make any, get any money back or not. And that's just ridiculous. And then there was a huge rush if you have private insurance that you could be exempt from that. Well, that rush is over. And so now people that get private insurance, they still have to pay into it. And the likelihood of them ever getting money is not happening either. So we're very concerned about that. Representative Obarno has introduced a bill to repeal the Long-Term Care Act and start all over again. We support that measure. However, politically, I don't think it's got a chance of survival. My guess is that there will be some nibbling around the edges. There might be some exemptions for older workers that are not going to get any benefit from it added on, and folks that move out of state that'll never see a penny of it as well. So there may be some nibbling around the edges, but a full repeal is not going to happen. I think this will go fully into place in July of 2023. And we as employers and you as workers will all be paying into the Long-Term Care Act. So stay tuned on that. The reason politically it's not going to go anywhere is that this is the Speaker of the House of Representatives' personal bill, and she is very vested in seeing that it goes fully into place. And I don't see anybody overcoming her speakership to overturn it or throw it out. I do see a message from Summer. Thank you. You have to make a previous engagement, and look forward to working with you too. Thank you so much for the information, Summer, and look forward to connecting with her. Fantastic, and congratulations to her and her new position there. That's wonderful. Let me go to qui tam. This is a real fun Latin term. And the acronym in California is PAGA, or the Private Attorneys Act. And qui tam is a way of saying that a attorney can sue on behalf of an individual, the state of Washington, and any employer or corporation on behalf of that individual for any violations of wage and hour or employment law legislation or bills that are already enacted. So they can sue, saying that a violation was committed by the Skamania County Chamber of Commerce, and on behalf of the employee, they can bring suit against you rather than the state doing so. So it's the, as we call it, the Trial Bar Full Employment Act. It went into effect in California and has caused absolute mayhem down there. The attorneys are getting very wealthy, and the companies are being sued right and left, usually frivolously. What happens is these will suits rarely go to court. They rarely are tried. What happens is they're settled out of court. The attorney and the law firm will send a letter to the Skamania Chamber saying, if you give us $10,000, we will drop the suit against you. And usually it's cheaper than taking somebody to court, which would be $25,000 to $30,000. And so they settle out of court, never goes to court, but the trial attorney gets a third to a half of that settlement cost. So it's very lucrative, and it will be a huge boon for them in the state, but a huge thorn in our side for employers and companies in the state of Washington. So really going to struggle. Again, this bill lost by 1 vote in the Senate, and they now have that 1 vote. So stay tuned on qui tam. This bill has been around for the last 7 years or more, and this is the top priority for the trial attorney. So we'll see if that makes it through. Here is a new and exciting bill on packaging. So It's very timely during the holiday season when we get our boxes on our doorstep from the big Amazon, or we go down to a local merchant and purchase something and it's wrapped up in a box or in that plastic cartony things and others. What do you do with the packaging, and who is responsible for it when it's when you get the product out of it? What do you do with it? And if you're like me, your garbage can ends up with all sorts of packaging and wrapping paper and other things. This is a packaging and extended producer responsibility. And it basically says, if you made the packaging, should you pay? If you made the product in the packaging, should you pay? Or if you're the person that sold it, the retailer, should you pay? This is a huge all-encompassing bill that covers every product packaging out there. And it's going to be very, very expensive. The Department of Ecology will start a new program that you will pay into it based on the market share of how much the packaging that you produce in the state of Washington. Interestingly, included in the bill by the prime sponsor is a bottle recycling bill. You're right on the border, so you know exactly about this. The state of Oregon has a recycling bill. You have to pay a deposit when you purchase something in a container in the state of Oregon, and then when you bring it back to that same location, you get your refund. That is included in this bill as well. The one thing I will say positively about the measure is that it does not require a mandatory take back at the retail establishment. If they want to, they can voluntarily take it back. If not, a consumer can return it to another location for a refund of that deposit that they paid on it. So it does have some improvements in that respect. Stay tuned. The bill's about 152 pages long, and we'll be working very closely on product packaging. Here's an interesting one that really impacts everybody on the phone and everybody that has a cell phone, or has ever purchased anything online, or has any kind of personal information out there at all. Because what control you have over it, how it is utilized, and more importantly, how it is monetized. So information is money, and companies across the spectrum are very interested in collecting data on all of us and monetize. Often there are a lot of them that like to monetize our data and sell it. If you're on Facebook, if you're on LinkedIn, if you're on any of the social media platforms out there, Twitter, they harvest your information right and left, and they monetize and sell a lot of it. Here's the big difference between a retailer and a social media platform or other data manager is retailers take that information to better serve and to market to their customers. And so if I'm a member of Nordstrom and I have a Nordstrom credit card, they see and know exactly what I bought, when I bought it, what color I bought, and size and all that. They will send me ads saying, hey, 50% off on that pair of gray slacks that you really like. Come get these other ones. Come get that blue sport coat. How about a really cool tie for you? They market to you. We do not, retailers are not in the business of collecting the data to package it up and sell it to another company. Where these other companies, that is where they make all of their money, is by packaging it up and selling it to other companies. Retailers buy a lot of that data from them to market and try to find new consumers. Well, the big data privacy battle, and it passed down in California, they seem to pass everything down in California, is how much control do all of us have over our personal data? Can we call Nordstrom and say, hey, stop sending me stuff. I don't want any more ads. I don't want you to collect any more of my data. Can you call Facebook and say, stop collecting my stuff? Amazon, pick a company, and can we tell them to stop and what they can and can't do with it? Can we find out what they already have on us? This is the big data privacy debate. A bill was introduced specifically on healthcare data by the Attorney General and the Governor last month, and that will be debated. Will a broader general data privacy measure be introduced? Yet to be seen. The prime sponsor announced his retirement and is not going to go forward, but somebody else may pick up the mantle and run a general data privacy measure. But there will be a personal healthcare information, especially on the monetizing of your personal healthcare data. Paid family and medical leave. This was a grand bargain between labor and the employer community. It was very unique. It's actually presidential and trend setting across the entire country. Most other states are looking at this. The feds are looking at this as well, where both employers and employees pay into a paid family and medical leave program. There is already a federal law on the books that says you have to, if for the birth of your child and other instances, have to provide 12 weeks of leave. It doesn't have to be paid in some instances. This is a paid program that both employers and employees pay into. We think it's a pretty decent system. It has a little bit of challenges on the viability of how much is being paid in and how much is being taken out. So the legislature had to put into it, I hate to say this number, $350 million to prop it up this last session because it was bankrupt. They have tweaked it a little bit, so the taxes will be going up, unfortunately, for all of us. The problem is when they're increasing the taxes legislatively, we're fearful that there will be some attempts by labor in particular to exempt employees from paying into the program, which was part of the grand bargain. We'll be fighting any attempts to take the employee out of the equation of a paid family and medical leave program that we went along with under the promise that everybody would participate. So if they try to take them out, well, we'll be fighting that effort legislatively. Here's a real fun and new one. It's called margins tax. So the state of Texas has a margins tax, or they like to call it a franchise tax. The state of Washington, as you all know, if you're a business owner or work in any kind of business, pay a business and occupation tax. The business occupation tax, or B&O tax, is one of the most hated and not really appreciated taxes in the state of Washington. It's a gross receipts tax based on however much you grossed in your business. There are no exemptions. If you lost money, your business went in the hole and lost money, you still pay exactly the same amount of the gross receipts based on that, regardless of what your net was. In other states, they recognize this, especially with the margins tax, and they allow you to take deductions for things like cost of goods sold, personnel expenses, that you can deduct that from your tax owed to the state. Well, the state of Washington convened a tax study work group to look at our tax structure to try to make it more fair for businesses in the state of Washington. So they said, well, this margins tax out of Texas looks pretty appealing. Let's try that up here. So there will be a bill introduced to eliminate our business and occupation tax, which was instituted, I believe, in 1935, throw it out and put in place a margins tax. They have said very clearly at the tax study work group that it is not to increase taxes to the state of Washington tax collections. It's a revenue neutral exercise, but they did admit, and this is the big wild card, is there will be winners and there will be losers in the business community. Businesses that have high cost of goods sold or high personnel cost, retail in particular, might actually fare better with a margins tax than they do with the B&O tax. Businesses with low cost of goods sold, construction and others, might actually end up paying more. So in the employer community, there could be some real winners and some real losers under a margins tax versus a B&O tax structure. The other big wild card, and I don't know if Stevenson, do you have a B&O tax down in Stevenson or not? You do. Okay. So here's the other big wild card is if the state eliminates a state B&O tax, what do the local governments do? Do they get to keep their local option B&O tax? Or do they have to move to a different system? It'd be hard to institute a margins tax on a local level. So what do? And there's, I believe, 43, 44 cities in the state of Washington, all on the west side of our state, that have a B&O tax, and that's a revenue stream for them. And to take that away from them would be a huge financial burden for them. So there is no solution yet proposed for local B&O tax options. What do they do? And that is a big wild card out there. If I had to handicap whether or not the state of Washington adopts a margin tax over a B&O tax elimination, I'd say it's probably got a 15-20% chance of survival. There are too many unknowns. There are going to be too many industries that are fighting it tooth and nail to stop it. And there will be a few that will be supporting it. The bill is not out yet, and it's going to be a massive bill. The other thing that's really problematic is the Department of Revenue, our tax department, doesn't have the staff, the knowledge, or the ability or the wherewithal to actually institute a margins tax. It'd be years in coming, and they'd have to like triple the size of their agency in order to make it a margins tax. It's much more complex than a B&O tax, which is very easy to administer. So the agency's not ready, the local governments aren't ready, and a lot of industries aren't ready. This will likely be a multi-year effort. This will be the first year that it gets debated. It'll probably be back the following session, the following session, and the following session. If it ever does actually get adopted, it'll probably be 5-6 years down the road. So stay tuned for a big battle on the margins tax. That should be a real interesting one. Warehouse safety. I don't know if you have any warehouses down in Skamania. Do you, Minnie, Angie?
Nope.
I'm going to skip that
Not a
one.
lot.
I'm going to go to the very last one on my list here, and that is psychologists as attending physicians. You're going, what the heck is that? So with the Department of Labor and Industries, again, if you're an injured worker, you are entitled to and assigned, you will be able to select an attending doctor, a physical doctor, to be your attending physician. It's usually the doctor that you normally see. This is a proposed bill by the Department of Labor and Industries to allow a psychologist to be your attending physician rather than a medical doctor. Usually a medical doctor, if you're suffering from a psychological impairment from your injury, can refer you to a psychologist, but this would say the psychologist could be that first line of attending if your injury is based on a psychological impairment rather than a physical impairment. So I reached out to, and I said, well, that's kind of bypassing the system that we currently have in place. And what will that do to the quality of care for that injured worker? We reached out to the Psychology Association and to the Doctors Association. We said, what do you guys think of this bill? And they both said, we don't like it. And I'm going, oh, why is the agency trying to do it? Well, if they do this, they bypass the need for a medical doctor, they save money. So it's a money-saving move by the agency. We, as the employer representatives for retailers, are very concerned about our injured workers losing that connection with their medical doctor and making the referrals to the psychologist. So we have some real reservations. We're discussing this with the agency. We're working with the Psychology Association and the Washington State Medical Association to ensure that our injured workers get the care that they truly need, and that it's not just a money-saving exercise for the departments. We do like saving money, but not at the expense of injured workers. And those were the big issues. I think I told you 10, Angie, and I actually slipped in 11 there, but I did skip over one. So I'm actually kind of at 10. Happy to answer any questions about the legislative session coming up, any crystal balls that I may have, or any of the issues I touched on. I am available for you folks, but I really appreciate the chance to visit with you this morning.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions on any of the topics you discussed?
I don't have a question, but just a comment. I think I misinterpreted your question about the local B&O tax. So as far as I know, we do not have a local B&O tax.
Okay. That's good to know. A lot of cities have chosen not to do that, and other cities are implementing that. I just saw the city of Tukwila up in south end of Seattle just adopted a B&O tax, and to bolster their police department because they're running out of officers, and the crime is increasing up there. So they're adopting a B&O tax, a very modest one, to help out with their police force up there, which we think is a pretty good use of the money.
What we do have is we are the participant in the Washington Main Street tax credit program.
Okay.
And that allows any Main Street communities like Stevenson to work with businesses to redirect essentially their B&O to their local Main Street program. So that is, very interesting topic that I know Main Street communities will be tuning in for across the state, because it's our largest revenue source as our local nonprofit.
Wow. Wow. I'm curious how much LTAC lodging and how much money do you get much from the LTAC funds?
The chamber does. That's our largest largest line item for our budget, for our income. And I know Kelly receives some as well, but we depend on it. We wouldn't be able to function without it.
Yeah, I bet. Your area is definitely a destination vacation place to visit, especially with your beautiful lodge there and all your other tourist activities. I can see a lot of people coming there, and that being a great funding source for all of your activities and further promotions of it. So I would guess it's pretty important for your community. So glad there is just to get off topic, and I think you've already heard this, Angie, at our conference and others, there may be attempts to tap into that LTAC funding for other things, and to put restrictions and what you can use it for and what you can't use it for. So be wary of that. It's not an area I delve into for our association a lot, but I have heard rumblings around the Palace of Clear Thinking up there about things they might do to the LTAC money. Yeah,
we'll be having to keep an eye on that as well.
Yes. Well, I will also add that you all on the phone are very fortunate with your legislative delegation. You've got some really strong representation up in Olympia. You're very fortunate. They get it and understand how important a vibrant and healthy business community is to all of the other things that we enjoy in our communities. Without strong businesses, you don't have the employment, the revenue, the tax dollars to run all the other operations. So you've got a great delegation that I really enjoy working with, much more than my delegation up here in the beautiful city of Olympia, which don't really get it. And I wish sometimes I could trade them for others, but don't tell them I told you that.
Well, thanks again.
Yeah, thank you so
Any other
much.
questions? I put my contact info is my email's there, and of course, Angie, you know where to find me. Feel free to share my cell phone with anyone. It was really nice meeting all of you. I wish you all a happy holidays, Merry Christmas, or however you celebrate, and Happy New Year. 2023 is going to be awesome. I'm really looking forward to it, and look forward to getting down to Skamania to come visit you guys.
Yeah, we hope to have you down. It'll be when the weather is better.
That would be fun. That would be fun. Well, you guys all have a great one, and be careful in that snow and ice down there, okay?
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this today.
Yeah, we appreciate
Anytime,
it.
call anytime, happy to during session or whenever you like.
Okay, sounds good.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody. Stay
Bye.
warm.
Bye-bye.
Bye.